Hi everyone, this is Andrew Prima, Ukrainian American reporting from Kiev. In today's podcast, week 151 of Russian invasion of Ukraine, and this is the third week of January 2025. In today's podcast, Ukraine inflicts a massive drone attack on Russian refineries. We're also going to talk about how Trump will put pressure on Putin to end the war. So Ukraine fired a large volley of exploding drones at Russia on January 24th, according to Ukraine officials and the Russian military, in a barrage that set an oil refinery and pumping station on fire and briefly closed multiple airports, including several serving the capital of Russia, Moscow. The attack was the latest and one of the biggest in Ukraine's campaign to disrupt Russian military logistics and to put pressure on country's economy by striking the oil industry, which is Moscow's main source of revenue for the war. Ukraine's fleet of drones, which resemble small airplanes and have a range of about 1,000 miles, have attacked Russian refineries and factories at least 17 times this year and dozens of times in 2024. Ukraine has ramped up drone production over the past year and now routinely fires large volleys. Social media posts by Russians showed fireballs erupting early Friday over a major refinery in Ryazan, a city about 110 miles southeast of Moscow. The first explosion at the refinery occurred around 1 o'clock in the morning local time, with approximately 4 blasts reported near the village of Dyatkova and 10 near the settlement of Posochnaya. Shortly after, loud noises were also heard in Ryazan itself. According to the Russian sources, drones attempted to strike the refinery, resulting in a fire at the facility. According to several media channels, Russia's Ryazan oil refinery has ceased operations following an attack by Ukrainian drones. The attack results in a fire of the oil storage facility, damaging several structures, including a rail overpass and hydrocracking unit used to remove impurities from petroleum products. Rail loading equipment was damaged, one of the sources said. Rail shipment are not being made and crude processing has been halted. Another source noted that shipments were suspended as early as Friday, January 24th. Other sources confirmed that refineries' operations were halted due to the inability to ship petroleum products. And after actually the first drone strike on January 24th, the Ukrainian military repeated the strike and the same facility again on January 26th. So now the refinery is damaged severely and it might take months to get back to normal operations. The refinery products fuel for military equipment, aviation, kerosene, diesel fuel, and other petroleum products used by the Russian army. The facility plays a crucial role in supplying fuel to both the civilian economy and the Russian military industrial complex. The General Staff headquarters of Ukraine's military said that military and intelligence agencies had coordinated the drone attacks and hit an oil refinery and oil pumping station in Ryazan, starting huge fires. In the nearby Bryansk region, Ukrainian drones hit an electrical components factory that makes chips for the fighter jets and missiles, including two models of Russian intercontinental ballistic missiles, the Topol M and Bulava. Overall, the Russian Defense Ministry claimed to have downed 124 Ukrainian drones over 11 Russian regions, plus Crimea and Moscow. overnight from Thursday to Friday. Russian oil refineries have been a frequent target for Ukraine. Russia, over the past 2 decades, invested heavily in refineries, aiming to add value to its oil industry by exporting gasoline, diesel, and aviation fuel in addition to crude oil. Many of the refineries are within the range of Ukrainian drones, and because the sites themselves are flammable, small warheads can set off in fairness. The attacks complement Western sanctions that have cut into Russian oil revenue, though sales have remained robust enough to bolster the economy and finance the war effort. President Trump used a video address to the Davos Economic Forum on Thursday to press for the importance of reducing Russia's income from oil and ending the war. So, how Trump will put pressure on Putin? The new US president seems to continue Biden's policy by putting pressure on Russia with sanctions. Every day, Donald Trump tells what he will do to quickly end the war. I think he can do something and explain to the actual Kremlin officials if they continue this game further about the final act of this, including for them tragedy. Look what Trump can do. Trump can simply destroy Russia without firing a shot, but using economic methods. What does Russia sell actually to the United States? They sell uranium, and that's a lot of income. What does Russia sell to the West? It sells aluminum and also in big quantities. What does Russia do? Does What else Russia is selling to Western countries or does for for other countries? It actually builds tens of billions of dollars worth of nuclear energy plants. And Russia also sells oil and liquid LNG to the West. And this is in the current circumstances was when the Russian giant Gazprom has hit rock bottom, when entire sectors of the Russian economy are laying seriously. And if Trump also puts pressure on the Russian allies like China and India, then the income of the Russian economy will decrease almost to zero, maybe even get into the red. And then, what is the point of continuing the war in Ukraine? By and large, this is a continuation of Biden's policy, who put pressure on Russia with sanctions, but slowly. We didn't like such speed during the Biden's presidency, but now such plans of Trump's are very good, especially if the process will go in two directions. One is the economic one, which Trump is talking about, and the second is such that weapons will continue to flow to Ukraine to defend from the Russian invasion. Add to this what we will have within the framework of NATO and the European Union. That is, all this gives us the opportunity to say that Russia today is falling into a perfect storm. And if Putin rejects Trump's proposal now, then this storm will be catastrophic for Russia. The only question is what, in fact, Trump will offer. Here is the mystery. We would certainly like him to propose what would truly be called a just peace, because peace is simply is truth until the next war. Everyone understands this perfectly well, even some of the greatest pacifists in America and Europe. Therefore, if we could convince Trump of the need to clearly and precisely spell out everything that will lead to just peace, then Putin will have particularly no chance of retreat. Then he will be forced to retreat. But we have not heard from Donald Trump and his team any statements that would tell us that they are striving for just peace. To everything that we understand by just peace. This includes reparations, reconstruction of Ukraine at the expense of Russia, and the return of territories. What did Trump say on his first day after inauguration, saying the decree of the Oval Office. He said, "There must be a deal. I know that Zelensky is ready for a deal." And this, by the way, is very strange because you and I, we all of us, know this. Well, at least the details of the agreement which Zelensky agreed, according to Trump. Zelensky is ready for a deal, Trump says. Now we just need to convince Putin to sign the deal. That's all we've heard from Trump so far. Zelensky recently revived the idea that supposedly, if we return to the line of demarcation as of the beginning of the full scale invasion, then from that moment on, we could begin negotiations on a diplomatic settlement of the entire situation. This is such a transparent, but it seems to me quite clear hint that this is probably the line to which we cannot retreat. But then we can talk about part of Donbass, about Crimea, as a prospect for a diplomatic settlement. We can only fantasize a little in this case. This is not what we officially have, but such a statement leads to such conclusions. Do we imagine that Putin will go for it? That's pretty much Putin's problem. And he himself drove himself and his quasi empire into such a catastrophic situation. Therefore, let him, not you and I, think about the consequences. But if Trump was to say, if Zelensky is ready and Putin is not ready, then what we will do? I will then impose the same sanctions and I will help Ukraine with the weapons. Well, this means that then, from such a statement, we need to count somewhere maybe 6 months, and after that, we can even bet that Russia will crawl to the negotiations and say, "Don't hit us hard. Let's talk." But Trump has not yet made such a statement. But now we have come to the most important thing. We need to make sure that Trump makes such a statement. So it seems to me that it would be very, very important that before a potential meeting between Trump and Putin, intensive contacts take place between us and the Americans, including at the highest level. But for now, it is premature to even talk about a meeting between Putin and Trump because we all know first a position is formed. First, all the details are prescribed, and first, this position is agreed with partners and allies. And only after that, there is a contact during which the position, if not only the United States but also the Western world, is expressed. Politicians from Europe are putting pressure on Trump. We're putting pressure on Trump. That is, hard diplomatic work is underway to form the right position in Trump's team. Yes, Trump can act absolutely as he wants, but if it goes against the interest of Europe, will his NATO partners support him? They actually not. Will they do things that are simply beneficial only for Trump? Not at all. Europe is close to the Russian bear. Thus, it's officially interested in ensuring that its own interests are taken into account. What are these interests? So that Putin doesn't have the opportunity to attack either Ukraine or Europe. Trump must take this into consideration. That is, I think, that first there will be a phone conversation during which Trump will tell Putin in very general terms that here are the two options. The option, as he said, is easy and the option is difficult. The easy one is that you crawl away and we agree on something, but you keep yourself and your quasi empire. And the difficult one is when we force you to do this. Well, you have a couple of weeks to think about it, and then we will act accordingly. I think that this is exactly how things will go. And if Putin says yes, then the door will open for preparing meetings and we will be able to talk about some more or less specific details of such agreement. But even This will not mean signing an agreement because, as everyone knows, the devil is in the details, and the details can very drastically change the situation during the negotiations. Therefore, by joining efforts, both ours and European ones, we must convince Trump that no one needs a settlement of the war and that it will not bring anything possible, but will only prolong it for several years. We must use all opportunities at all levels, both Ukrainian and European, convince the Trump team that only punishing the Putin regime will be a chance to ensure that there is no more war from Russian territory. Once again, we return to the key thesis about guarantees. We must explain to our American partners that a real conditions for peace can only be a clear guarantee of either Ukraine's accession to NATO or the signing of bilateral agreement with the three nuclear countries and Ukraine on Article 5 of the Washington Treaty. And judging by Volodymyr Zelensky's latest statements, including at the Davos Economic Forum, Ukraine has a very high hopes for the Europeans. They will help Ukraine convince Trump of this. And actually, what did Donald Trump did in his first week in the White House? We see drastic changes, and we see how Trump preparing for the conversation with Putin. If we examine what Donald Trump has done in the first week of his presidency, he has demonstrated his conviction of his actions and intent to intimidate those who fail to fall in line. Trump's motto is my way or highway. To illustrate, Colombia refused to accept US military aircraft transporting illegal immigrants, and the Trump administration responded by threatening to snap uh, punitive tariffs on Colombian exports to the US. So, what happened? Immediately, Colombia caved to Trump's demands. Trump also demanded that the European Union increase its defense spending, and actually, a few European countries have already agreed to meet the US goal, while others are left trying to figure out how to achieve defense spending of a 3 to 5% of GDP per year. Asking or almost asking Saudi Arabia to lower their prices and invest 1 trillion instead of 600 billion is also a powerful statement. Trump demonstrates his power with every move, and those who interact with him have no choice but to listen to what he says and does, or they will be screwed big time. All this looks like the new US president is warming up before beginning more serious talks with dictator Putin. The Kremlin is attentively watching his moves and drawing their own conclusions. Trump's actions aim to show Putin that when they sit down to talk, he will be forced to take Trump's proposal very seriously and that he doesn't want to piss Trump off. Otherwise, Putin risks having his country completely isolated from the global community, and the Russian population and economy will both suffer for years or maybe decades. Thank you for listening. If you like my podcast, please share with your friends.